Hey everybody, how are you doing? It's 5 o'clock on Thursday, and it's that time. It's time live with Lenny. Let's do this. Today we're going to be talking about the Schoolie striper bite, and I'll bring Lenny here on in a second. I do want to do some business here before we get started, and that, of course, is to thank our sponsor for today, who is Curtis Stokes Associates. Curtis Stokes. Proud sponsor and has been with FishTalk since the beginning, which is awesome. We really appreciate that. And if you're looking for a good fish boat, check out Curtis Stokes, man. They're one of the largest firms out there, but they do a great job for great things. And if you support them, you support us. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to bring in, you guessed it, the angler in chief, Mr. Lenny Rudow.
Hello. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. Are you ready for something special?
Oh, always.
Oh, yeah. Let's get started with something special. So, before we jump into the Schoolie striper bite, I have breaking news, a special report. Da, 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 da. Here it comes. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Oh, boy. Oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy, oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my little friend.
Oh.
Look what I have for you. Yes, people, if you are wondering if it's time to go crabbing yet, the answer is uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So around the trout line this morning, I got up early and crabbed for about 3 hours, got 17 keepers. Maybe 4 of them were jumbos. Only a few were barrelies. Most of the rest were nice. So not exactly a banner crabbing day by any stretch, but hey, for this time of the year, it was my first trip, and I'm not a great crabber. So if you're out there, if you're wondering, is it time? Head on over to the tackle shop, get yourself some foul necks, head on over to the grocery store, get the big can, because yes, if I could catch 17 this morning, you can probably go out and catch 30 or more. So
how many of those big cans of Old Bay do you go through in a year?
Oh, well, actually, I kind of got caught up in the COVID hoarding thing. I think right now I have 2 of the ginormous ones and 3 of these cans, and I got a couple little ones that are like hidden places. I have a little single serving pouch somewhere here on my desk. I'm not sure exactly where it is, though.
Just in case.
Gotta have it. Gotta have it. It is a must.
That's awesome.
So I do want to say also, before we jump into the Schoolies, I noticed one thing. When it came about that Curtis Stokes Associates was our sponsor for the evening, just out of curiosity, I pulled their last ad in FishTalk. I saw an 18-foot 2015 Robalo for under 30 grand, a 91 20-foot Strato center console for $99,999, under 10 grand,
Yeah.
A 25-foot Maycraft, heck, a 48-foot Hatteras. So if you're looking for a used boat, they got the selection. And of course, as you said, they're FishTalk sponsors. We can't do this without them supporting us. So we love it.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say this. There are a lot of used boats out there on the market. And one of the reasons, there are a lot of reasons to use a broker, but one of the reasons is they really do the homework before, for you. They're not going to take just any boat. They want a good boat that's going to deliver what you want. So
yeah, unlike Joe, whoever, they've got a rep to defend.
Exactly. So, gosh, before we get going, we already got a question. I feel like we should ask it now before we get.
Oh my God! Well, I love it when people chime in with questions. I'm happy for them to do it at any time. So sure,
Yeah.
What do we got here, Chris?
Well, Dan says, "Can you talk a little about where to find the white perch now?"
Okay. Well. Depends on where you are, because they were starting to move into the rivers, but we got this bad water on the western shore right now. Pretty much from the Packs all the way up to Baltimore, there's icky red yuck water. And honestly, since that moved in, it's been a couple weeks now, I have not been able to locate them. Now, my son has been running down to Triton Beach. He's been catching some in the salt pond there, but they've been small. I'm afraid it's going to be difficult till we get rid of this weather, and I'm hoping that this storm front pushes that bad water out of here and makes it a little easier to find them. Just prior to that, they were on the oyster bars in 10, 12, 14 feet of water, so that's where I would go looking.
All right.
All right, let's talk schoolies. Come on.
Let's do this. All
This
right.
is a big bite. This is happening. Give me
Uh,
that slide, Chris. Give me that slide.
All right. Hold on one second. That just caught me way off guard. I'm out of my rhythm now.
Well, folks, just so you know, the reason we like to do this live is because we can answer questions. So at any time, if you got a question, pop it into the comments. Chris will field them. I can't really read the comments as I'm doing this, but he'll field them and put them up on screen as he did there, and we'll take it from there.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
So this was Friday evening, the mouth of Eastern Bay. That's one of my sons there, David. And it's kind of tough to tell in that photo, but that is a white BKD skirted chartreuse. So we got a chartreuse skirt and a white tail. Chris, go ahead and swing right on over to the next one. All right, so you might recognize that guy. Again, it's hard to see in this picture. You got a pink skirt there, but the tail that is underneath of that pink skirt, that's another white. And if you notice that jig head, that is a jig head to lust after. But you got to go all the way up to Joppatown Marine and talk to Dave to get a hold of those things. They're not easy to come by, but they are fantastic. That's a 1 ounce head. We're fishing 1 ounce. And here comes Ryan. You can see here he's got just a straight white, no skirt. Now, hopefully you can see on here, that's actually a paddle tail. Ryan's only been on the bay a handful of times. Whenever I have someone like him who's not incredibly experienced at throwing jigs, I give them the paddle tail because it just, it has that innate action. It moves whether he jigs properly or not, and it works out really well. Again, this here is the mouth of Eastern Bay. Go ahead and take me to the next one here. All right, this is Alex, my niece. You can see again, you got a white tail and a pink skirt. Are we noticing a trend here, people? And I'm not talking about the pink. Pink, chartreuse, white, all those skirts are working. Pretty much everything we caught a fish on had white in the mix. We also caught a few on a chartreuse tail with a white skirt. So pretty much, I think pretty much everything had white. Now, I want to talk a little bit how we were presenting these lures, because one of the things that a couple people did through the weekend that kind of, I don't want to say it irks me, but I'm just like, oh, come on. You're doing a relatively slow drift, and they're just jigging up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down, straight up and down. Sometimes that works fine, but a lot of the times, and this past weekend for sure, you'll get a much better result if you cast it out and then hop it, okay, rather than going straight vertical. On a windy day when the boat's really moving, straight vertical is fine. You get that line stretched out a little bit. The lure appears to be traveling through the water, right? But when you have a very slow drift, if you're vertically jigging, the lure just goes up and down. It's not going, across at all. When you're in that situation, throw that lure away from the boat and then hop it along the bottom. Every time we had calm water, that's definitely the more effective method. 99 times out of 100. Again, if it's really windy, you got a strong drift, it's fine to go up and down. But other than that, get it away from the boat and move it. All right, let's go ahead to that next one there. Oh, all right, I jumped the gun. Can we freeze there for a sec? Nope, too late. Sorry. I did want to talk about the wear on this. You heard me say the mouth of Eastern Bay a couple times. Good job on catching up to my mistake, Chris. You heard me mention the mouth of Eastern Bay a couple times. Honestly, I was going there because most of the trips we did through the last week or so have been half days. They haven't been whole days. I've been running out in the evening, after work. I've been running out Saturday and Sunday too. I just ran out in the evening, and I'm not going real far. So that's really why I'm focused there. There are fish there. There was much better fishing there Friday than there was over the weekend. And I talked to a lot of guys who didn't do well there over the weekend at all. And I'm not saying this is why, but I can tell you that on Friday evening, we were the only boat there. There was just nobody else around. And then Saturday and Sunday, there were 30, 40 boats, some trolling, some jigging, some running around. So, maybe that had an effect. Some other areas that we've been hearing in the reports have been happening since the schoolies came in. Mouth of the Chop Tank is one. What else we got? I got to refresh my memory here. Oh, yeah. So Smith Point, the mouth of the Potomac, those have been good areas. Even down off Fleets Bay for you Virginia guys. Now, most of the guys down there that we've been hearing from have been trolling, not jigging. but those areas have been holding fish in this size. Of course, the Virginia guys have a slot they got to do. They can't go over 28. The fish that we've caught the last few days have been up to 32. So for them, some of those fish would be throwbacks. For us, perfectly fine. What was the other thing I wanted to mention about the spots here? Oh, yes. So we haven't really gotten any reports since the Schoolies came in for jigging in the upper bay. It doesn't mean you're not going to catch them. It just means we're going to get any reports on it, you know. And I wanted to mention, you know, I grew up near Baltimore, and we had a boat out of Bykin for years and years and years and years and years. Fished the upper bay all the time. And if I were going out tomorrow north of the bridge, you can bet I would be motoring over Belvedere shoals and watching the meter closely. A lot of those shoals have some really abrupt edges, really nice structure, and this is a good time to go poking around them and looking. The only action we've really heard of up there has been a few guys chumming, but we'll talk more about that later. Chris, go ahead and bring up the next slide because I want to talk a little trolling here. This is a report that came in from Brady and Warren. They got 3 big fish, 3 overs, and 2 schoolies the other day. They tagged and released these fish. Thank you, guys. Great job. But what really stood out to me in the report that came from them was, he said, 4 out of 5 of those fish came on whites. So here we go again, people. White, white, white. There's definitely a trend that can be identified here. Chris, go ahead and slide over the next one here. So here we have, once again, white, shocker, although just for the record, this picture is not from the spring. It's an old shot. But I wanted to put it up here because you see the small baits on the umbrella. This is the time that you do want to start throwing out those smaller lures if you're a troller. Those smaller umbrellas, smaller tandems. This is a good time to downsize if you want to catch these fish. You'll still catch, you know, some 20-somethings with the big stuff, but not nearly as many. And the fact of the matter is there are still some big fish being caught, not in as good numbers as they were. So if I were going trolling tomorrow and I were going to put out a full spread, honestly, I think half of them would be little stuff and half of them would be big stuff, kind of split the difference. But for sure, you want to be getting some of those smaller lures into the mix at this point, particularly if you want to take home a 22, 24-inch fish, which, hey, truth be told, is a better tasting fish than that 35, 40-inch fish anyway, right? The schoolies they're good eating. All right, let's go on to the next one here. All right, so we got the shallows. Once again, I totally blew it and forgot to go into the last little bit about the trolling. You can leave that slide up, Chris, that's fine. But I did want to mention Love Point has been coming in the reports for the upper bay guys, in the middle bay, the mouth of Eastern Bay, Deal, Parker's Creek, the mouth of the Potomac. Mouth of the Potomac has been a good area with a lot of reports coming, particularly from that kind of zone, kind of off St. George's Island, off the edges there. This is probably 3 or 4 years running. That's kind of been a top spot for the schoolie fish once they come in season. So definitely some places to keep in mind. All right, now this picture, this is my lovely wife, Melissa. I wanted to put this picture in particular on here because, you know, coming out of the South River, Thomas Point Lighthouse is literally like on the way to virtually anywhere I go, unless I'm just running dead south. So I think in the last 10 days, I probably stopped and tossed jigs at the lighthouse 6 times. 4 of those times never got a bite. 1 of those times caught 1 dink, and 1 of those times had a pretty decent bite. But that was about 10 days ago. So I wouldn't make a long haul from anywhere to go there. But really, the reason I wanted to mention this is because the shallows are coming on in some areas, and some shallower water spots like this are starting to produce. Unfortunately, remember when the gentleman asked about the perch, and I said, you know, we kind of got messed up by this bad water. The same thing is happening in the shallows. Again, basically in all the river mouths from the Patuxent clear up to Baltimore. All the shallow water spots are just kind of wrecked at the moment. At least they were as of yesterday, yesterday. And we got to wait for this bad water to flush out. Hopefully this weather pushing through in the next couple of days here will help us with that. But I've hit the inside of Thomas Point, the rock piles in 3-4 feet of water several times. I've hit some spots at the mouth of the West. I've hit some spots off Franklin Manor. Good shallow water spots normally produce for me. Hasn't been happening. And it's been constant ick. The water's been constant ick. Now, I did try a couple of shallow water spots on the eastern side. Was Sunday, and we did do well. Not great, but we did do well. We put a few fish in the box. We threw some fish back. I wouldn't call it hot, but I would call it, if you're a shallow water guy and you really love that kind of action, I'd say definitely go for it on the eastern side. One thing about the spots we found the fish, it was all on riprap with a good drop off. It was not, retrieving through 1 and 2 feet of water. It was not on timber. It was on riprap, and it was on good drop offs going down to 5, 6, 8 feet. So that was all good stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention about the shallow water bite, and man, if someone else has had a different experience, please chime in right now and let me know. But I have not had the topwater thing happen yet. Someone on the boat has been throwing topwater pretty much at some point in the trip, and it just hasn't happened yet. Now, I got one report from somebody fishing up Eastern Bay, way up Eastern Bay, getting close to the Narrows. He had a rock pile that is submerged in about 3 feet of water. He said he got several fish at dusk on topwater, including one that was at 24, 25. But other than that, that's all I got. So, I love topwater too. I will keep trying to throw it for a little bit each trip, but make sure you got some jigs in your box. Okay? All right.
Hey, Lenny.
Yeah, what you got?
We got some questions.
Okay, hit me.
Let's go. Larry, can you read that?
Where's the best shore and pier fishing in Maryland? Larry, I got about 30 answers for you, depending on what you want to catch. Are we talking casting bait for bottom fish? Are we talking rockfish? What are we talking about? Let me give you some ideas, though, some really good ones. First off, Kent Narrows. Kent Narrows has a public area you can fish from right down under the bridge, which is pretty darn phenomenal. It can have spectacular fishing. A lot of current. If you're throwing out stuff that's going to be sitting on bottom, you got to plan on losing some rigs. But really good fishing in there. Another one now, and I should mention, I believe that is closed to Schoolie scrapers until June 1. Okay, you can double check me on that. Go to the DNR website, look at the map. But I'm pretty darn sure once you get up inside Eastern Bay, you're closed till June 1. Mattapeak, you can cast off of Mattapeak. That's wide open right now. Of course, Point Lookout. Here's a funny one for you. There have been a number of guys who have been chucking bunker out of Sandy Point, both from the rock wall and from the beach itself. And they're trying to catch rockfish. And I haven't heard from one of them who's caught a rockfish yet, but guess what? They are catching some catfish. I'm talking blue cats in the 10, 12 pound range. Good numbers. So if you want to try and catch a nice big blue cat, that would definitely be a good one to go for. Fort Smallwood, I haven't heard anything from lately. Normally that's better a little later in the year, mostly white perch, catfish, that kind of thing. I would say if you go to fishtalkmag.com and plug into the search box shoreline spots, we do have a feature on there. The title's not ringing a bell right off the top of my head, but we have a top 10 no boat fishing spots kind of article for people who want to go fish the bay and don't have a boat, don't have access to a boat, and it includes several of the piers. Oh, one more I got to mention. If you are in the Solomons area, Solomons has a really nice fishing pier. Again, that's right under the bridge. You just pull into the parking lot there where the boat ramp is. Plenty of room. Now, I know that was closed down at one point due to the whole COVID thing. I'm not sure if it's open yet or not. I would call down there and find out before making a drive. But that is a really good spot. That's a really good one. That's good for both bait fishing for croaker, spot, catfish, and for throwing lures. Last year, some people were getting specks down there off of that pier at certain points in time. That was later in the year, but anyway, it's another really good spot. All right, is there another one there, Chris, or should I?
Someone was asking about specs. When do you think the specs will be in?
Oh, well, hi, Cheryl. That depends entirely on where you want to go right now, because when it comes to the Tangier Sound, they are in. They have been caught in the lower Potomac. I've heard of one caught in the lower Patuxent already. And that's a great segue. I'm so glad you asked that, because that segues right into what the last bit of the fishing the shallows part I wanted to talk about was some hot spots, which include the eastern side, Tangier, the Potomac. Those areas have been A, producing good numbers of specks, B, producing some slot redfish and some big redfish. All right, now I think the guys getting the big reds are fishing bait. That's going to get really tough soon when the rays show up. That kind of shuts all that down, because you just catch ray after ray after ray. But I haven't heard that happening yet. And there have been some really honking big reds caught. Lots and lots of schoolie stripers in the mix there. They're all through there as well. Here's the really interesting tidbit. Really interesting. In the past week, 10 days, we have gotten about a half a dozen reports from people who have also caught flounder down there. I'm not talking little dinks. I'm talking keeper-sized flounder in the Potomac and the Tangier. Now, all of last year, excluding the tackle shop reports, I'm just talking about reader reports, excluding the tackle shop reports, maybe all of last year we might have gotten a half a dozen reports of flounder from that zone. So this is a really good sign. It's a really good start. Let's hope that keeps up. But if you want to take a trip to the Tangier or the Potomac, fish that lower shore area, it's a really good time to do it right now. Absolutely.
And Cheryl just also wants you to know that you are her favorite fisherman next to her husband.
Wait, what does Neil say about that?
Yeah, well, all right, Neil, maybe. Anyway, just another question. Anything at Hackett's?
Yeah, so you know what? This, again, we got a great segue right there. Chris, go ahead and put up that next slide.
All right.
That's going to answer the question. Boom. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much from Thomas Point north, clear on up to Love Point to the triple buoys, all the reports from all the folks I'm getting who are chumming have been of catfish, 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 catfish. And they're also catching a few catfish. Now, here you see my lovely daughter Molly holding up one of her chumming catfish from the spring. They're good sized catfish. They're good eating. They're good eating. That guy ended up on the grill. It's pretty darn good. But they really have been dominating the bite for all the chummers, and they are the only thing, that's the only catch that I've heard of coming from Hacketts or Tollies. Doesn't mean you can't go there and try jigging or troll for sure, but that's the only solid intel that I've got on fish in those particular locations.
All right. And Mark.
Mark, same answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I noticed, I read the Maryland DNR fish report. I noticed in there that they mentioned some fish on the chum at, I think it was the sewer pipe in the bridge. I haven't gotten that report. I'm not doubting it. Don't get me wrong. I haven't gotten that report, but everybody that I've talked to who's been putting bait in the water has been catching catfish. That's kind of the bottom line. Now, we should also point out we had really low salinity yet again this spring, and we got a bunch of rain coming tomorrow, so it's likely to stay that way. We need the salinity to get up. Once that salinity gets up, the blue cats will turn tail and head back into the rivers, and the rockfish will have more free reign over some of these areas. Other than the cats, I got nothing solid on bait north of Thomas Point. Honestly, that's about the range.
Yeah. Christina has another question about the spot and when we can start live lining.
When can we start live lining a spot in the Middle Bay? So the answer to that question is just as soon as the spots show up. Now, I have not tried to catch spot yet. Haven't spoke with anyone who has. They were in the pound nets, certainly as far north as Point Lookout, weeks ago. The Virginia folks are catching spot, hook and line and pound nets. So it's a matter of time, and it's not going to be a heck of a long time. I would add to that you don't want to try live lining with spot before the spot are really around. I've gone through this in past years where, like, if you go out and really hunt and peck and work hard, you can get, a half a dozen a spot, and then you think, well, I got the ultimate bait, I'm going to crush them, and you go to where fish are being caught, and maybe you get one, maybe you don't, but it's just not a great bite. They don't really, the rockfish really don't focus on those spots until they show up in good numbers. That's when they really get hip to them. Now, that said, if you could go out and get some 5-6 inch white perch, absolutely can do the very same thing. Rockfish are not afraid to eat white perch. They are not one bit hesitant about it. And I know that some guys up north, I'm talking way up north, like up Susquehanna way, at some different times, it's legal today, it's not tomorrow, it's legal again, it's not tomorrow. I don't want to specify the time because I'm probably going to say it wrong, but when it has been allowed this spring, some guys have done that successfully. So I would not hesitate to try it with perch if you can get a hold of some.
Cool. She just wants to know about when we're talking about the Potomac, is it the river or the sound?
Oh, the sound, which I would include in that, the mouth of the river. But, the sound as a whole, that's really when I'm talking about the shallow water casting. The islands, of course, everyone's familiar with, Smith, Tangier, Bloodsworth. And they kind of share a border between the Tangier and the Potomac. Once you get into Virginia waters, I don't know, flip a coin. Are you still in Tangier or have you entered the Potomac? I'm not 1,000% sure, honestly. But that whole kind of zone, that whole lower eastern shore, that territory is, that's where I'm talking about, and it's all been good. From the Honga, I've gotten reports from the Honga, clear on down through Virginia, shucks, all the way to Cape Charles. A couple weeks ago, we were already getting reports of specks down Cape Charles way. So that whole stretch.
All right, we got a question from Frank about trolling.
Anyone trolling in Virginia past the CBBT? You know what, man? It's a good thing Frank mentioned this because that was supposed to be something that I mentioned in the original jigging part. Was that there have been a few reports from the CBBT of slot fish. Not a lot, but a few. I don't know how many people are targeting them as of yet. The weather's been lousy since the season opened, right? We had a couple days that were doable and then a whole lot of wind. I'm not sure what the effort level has been like, but there have been a couple reports. Now, I did not hear specified whether it was jigging or trolling. So I can't answer specifically, was it trolling? I'm not sure. But, certainly should be effective. No question about it. And there has been a lot going on down there. There have been a lot of options. There have been red drum, black drum, flounder. Oh gosh, the first of the sheep's head have been caught, specks. So there's a lot of other things folks have been focusing on down there right up until Tog went out. Tog bite was good, so a lot of people were doing that. So I'm not sure the effort level, but there have been a couple reports.
Cool. We're out of questions.
Woo! Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
All right, how are we doing on time here? We're about at the right time, I think.
Yeah, we're
not far. And that's good because I got my little friend in here. I can't leave him sitting in this bucket too long. I got to fire up that steam pot. But if anyone's got any other questions, plug them in quick here, and we'll try and get to them. And if not, don't forget, you can always leave the questions on the Facebook page. I will attempt to go back and answer any questions you got because, hey, we are here to help you catch more bigger fish.
That's right. Sorry, it's not really a question. We get a lot of statements in the feed, which sometimes I want to include them, and sometimes I'm like, nah. But Tom wants to he's been commenting, and I appreciate Tom's participation.
Okay. I really like this. And Tom, can you just give us a general vicinity? Are you talking Middle Bay, Lower Bay, Maryland water, Virginia water? Can you let us know? Because there are bluefish are definitely kind of throughout Virginia at this point, not in great numbers, but they're getting them. But I don't think I've heard of one in Maryland yet. Not in the Chesapeake zone. Is that where it came from? Come on, Tom. Come on, Tom. Inquiring minds want to know. Tom, where are you, Tom?
Well, pipe in. Jay's asking for, let's see. And this is a question for Zach. But
we need Zach. Is Zach on today?
He is. He's in there.
Zach, can you pop in here and help us out? Kayak launch in the Potomac Sound. Jay, stay tuned because Zach knows this stuff. I will mention to you in the Tangier, there's a great one at oh my goodness, in the big Anamessex River. I'm forgetting the name of the launch ramp. There's a launch ramp that has plenty of parking. It's just north of Crisfield, and it puts you into the big Anamessex and protected water. Lovely spot. We actually talked about it last week on Live with Lenny when I gave away that spot for protected water in case you have a small boat, kayak angler. That's a really nice spot.
Jay, stay tuned. I bet you Zach will pipe in here in a bit.
Yeah, Zach will chime in at some point here, and if it doesn't happen immediately, give him a minute. Middle Bay in the shallows. That's cool, Tom. That's cool. Thank you. That is interesting. That's the first one I've heard of.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tom, why did you send me a picture?
Yeah, Tom. Send us a picture. We'll put it in the magazine.
Trolling how deep. Okay, so I'm glad this question popped up here because something I failed to mention. The vast majority of the success I've had on Schoolies so far this season has been in the 22 to 26 foot range. That's been a sweet spot the past week. And prior to, I did some catch and release before the season came in. I hope I was allowed to. I think I was. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Can't remember. It's been a COVID brain. Anyway, that's kind of been the sweet zone for the depth. So you want your trolling lures to be traveling in, 15, 20 feet, somewhere in that zone. And if you want to keep having the prospect of the big fish, I would troll some of the edges and maybe try and zigzag the boat up onto the edge until you're in maybe 25 feet, and then slide back off and get into some deeper water, and then zig back over and kind of hedge your bets, do a little cover some different depths, and that way you got a shot at both the schoolies and the bigger fish.
All right, Kevin's got a good question. Red drum on jigs.
Are they on shallow structure mixed in with the specks and rock type of jigs? So yeah. They'll hit the same jigs. They're absolutely good. You'll absolutely find them mixed in. As to what type of jig they prefer, honestly, I'm usually spec fishing and I kind of get them mixed in, but they'll hit certainly the same stuff that the specs will hit. They definitely love the gulps. That 5-inch jerk shad is a killer. Whenever I go to Florida, and I end up for work fishing down in Florida a lot of times on press gigs with guides, through the years, many times, casting for redfish, there's one constant. Every one of those guys has a gold wobbling spoon on the boat. And every one of those guys makes sure that spoon sees action. So if you really want to target reds in the shallows, you probably want to have a gold wobbling spoon, like a Johnson's minnow, something like that. And you want to pull that, just wobble that thing through the water. For whatever reason, that is just a classic lure for them. But that said, like I said, all the same plastics that the specs will hit, the stripers will hit, the reds will definitely eat them too. Absolutely.
Steven, any concern about the overabundance of blue cats?
Yeah. Now more than usual. Well, shucks. When I was a kid, we caught channel cats. occasionally out in the upper bay, north of the bridge, after really rainy springs, you might catch a few in a day. Never anything like this, and never blue cats. And what was the year of the monsoons? Was it 3, 4 years ago? That just kind of triggered them going berserk in the upper and middle bay. They haven't chilled out since. They did back off a little bit last year when the salinity came up. They go back into the rivers. I'm sure I would think that's bound to happen again. They're not incredibly tolerant of very salty water. But as long as we got low salinity, they got free reign in the bay. And yes, there's a lot of concern about that. In fact, I have spoken with folks at the DNR who, of course, there's this great controversy over the snakeheads' impact on the ecology of our waterways. I've spoken with some folks at the DNR who've said, the snakeheads scare us, but what really scares us is the blue cats. Mm-hmm. Once they got into the Potomac, the Rappahannock, the James, I think the biomass in the James is now, like, the estimate is it's like 70% blue cats. I mean, they really, 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 really took over. So yeah, there is a lot of concern, and yeah, this is a little unusual.
Let's see. Christina has another question, and this is your territory.
If you were fishing out of the South River this weekend and didn't want to troll, what area and technique would you target? Well, first thing I would do is I would keep doing what I'm doing. I'm out of the South. I would slide by the lighthouse if there's not 80 million boats on it, and then roll over to the mouth of Eastern Bay, and I would work it with jigs. I'd look in that 22.4 to 26.8 range. After the weather coming through, I would expand the search a little bit because it's bound to shake things up some. I'd be going on and off at edges and drops where you got that range. Actually, if I didn't see fish pretty quickly, I'd push it to 20 to 30 feet. And then I would if that didn't work, I would head south. I might hit the rocks along Poplar Island. I might work the edge of the drop off towards the main shipping channel. I haven't gone this far south this year yet, but if none of that panned out, I would keep going down, and actually I would try the edge along the Stone Rock, especially the southern tip. There's some really good rocky zones there with really nice drop-offs. Historically, at this time of year, a lot of times you'll find pods of rockfish there right before the drums show up, as the drum are there. Shucks, look at the calendar. I mean, there could be black drum there right now. It would not shock me one little bit. So if I was going to go all the way down there, I'd have some soft crabs on board too, and I'd drop them down just to see. We do have cool water. It's kind of amazing. Over that stretch of the last 10 days, one day I was out, it was 61.3 degrees. The very next day, it was up to 64.3, and then the very next day, it was down to 61 and change again. I mean, just crazy, but it is what it is. So that's what I would do. I'd be throwing the jigs. I'd be giving that the attempt.
Lenny, have you caught a snakehead
in the bay? Not in the bay proper. Now, if you go all the way north, they get them on the flats, the Susquehanna Flats. They get them in the mouth of the Gunpowder. The snakeheads are even less salt tolerant than the blue cats are. So they tend not to be in the bay proper. I have heard of crabbers getting them in their crab pots. That was last spring and the spring before last, when, again, we had monsoons and there was just a ton of fresh in the upper and middle bay. So it makes sense they expanded their range a little bit. But that's about it. Not like, not at your normal out in the middle of the bay kind of spots. Certainly not on a normal basis.
Cool. There we go. Can you catch a rockfish on jigs in the Middle Bay River? Excuse me, Middle Bay area.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I've been doing for the last 10 days. That's my favorite way to fish. That's what I like to do. Chris, did I say how many fish we've been catching? I can't even remember. I want to give perspective. Um,
You said it was good. It wasn't great.
okay, so well, I'm taxing my memory. Friday evening, we caught something like 25 fish up to 32 inches. And that was an evening shot. I think I worked till 5, and then we took our time getting out of here and fished the evening. Saturday and Sunday were much tougher days. Half a dozen fish Saturday, maybe a dozen 14 Sunday, something like that. So, I mean, they're not spectacular numbers, but, when you're running out for a couple hours at a time, it's good fishing. So heck yeah, take those jigs and hit the middle bay.
Yeah. Well, I know you said you're not doing a lot of trolling, but I guess Bo's question's pretty good though.
Well, as a general rule of thumb, whether you're trolling, whether you're jigging, whatever, it's not going to be right now incoming versus outgoing. It's going to be a change of tide and a moving tide. It's going to be that last hour and a half before the tide switches over, then maybe the first half hour of the new tide. Then you're apt to have a slow period for, a few hours till the tide gets going again. Then it'll start to pick up and pick up and pick up. And as that tide really pushes and kind of hits its peak, it'll get better, 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 better. So I don't think it's going to be an incoming versus an outgoing. It's going to be more of a moving tide kind of issue.
Gotcha. I think that's what we've got for now.
Okay, well, that was a great last-minute flurry of questions there, Chris.
I like the last-minute flurry of questions.
I do too.
It just goes well. I like it's a lightning round for you. We should give you a prize.
And you, sir, are the lucky winner of
the oversupply of Old Bay. I got a fun story about Old Bay, actually. And I'll tell it now. I lived in Memphis, Tennessee in high school, and I know, right? And we would go to Arkansas to a lake that was up there every summer. Well, some buddies and I were together, and there was this little like shack barbecue place, and they served the best barbecue. It was so good, and it was called Brothers Barbecue. We loved it. And both my friends were both from Pennsylvania and very familiar with the Bay. And we just sat there one day, and they stopped for a second, and they went, "This is Old Bay." And I said, "What?" They said, "No, this is Old Bay. Like the barbecue, the dry rub is Old Bay." And and for the longest time, Brothers Barbecue is like, it's a secret recipe. Anyway, and then I realized, I was like, oh, wow, you're right. That is Old Bay. Anyway,
Old Bay rules.
In Arkansas.
Old Bay rules. Now, what's funny is somebody's going to jump in there and be like, oh, no, J.O. is the best. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I know.
We do live on the Chesapeake Bay.
Well, we're not going to start the barbecue wars or the seasoning wars here. Anyway, well, fantastic. Great job, Lenny. Another successful live with Lenny. Weather looks to be okay for this weekend. And is that right? Or am I getting it wrong?
Saturday looks a little icky. Sunday looks good.
You're right. Sunday, yeah. Anyway, well, get out there anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll be back next week with another live with Lenny. If you have questions and we didn't get to it, we'll try and, yeah, John, there he goes. John had a pipe in. J.O. is the best. Congratulations, John. You just won yourself a big can of Old Bay. So anyway, tune in next week. Thanks for tuning in this week. Again, a big thanks out to Curtis Stokes for sponsoring this one. And stay safe, stay healthy, and get out on the water.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, Lenny.
Don't miss another cool Fish Talk video. Click below to subscribe.